Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 4th Coalition Show. This is our November 3rd, 2025 edition of the show. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights, and we're against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We endorse all of the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as our custom, we do an emphasis on Article 23. So, number one, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment.
And I'm Holly Pelzinski, and number two is everyone without any, everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number three, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself or herself and his or her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection.
And number four, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of his or her interests.
Well, thank you. A week from tomorrow will be Veterans Day, and so we decided to dedicate this show to Veterans Day and how Veterans Day in 2025 affects us. We're lucky to have with us, like Holly Pelzinski. She introduced herself, but thank you, Holly, for doing that. And we're also lucky to have Chuck Roberts of Williamstown here. He was born in North Adams, I found out. And he's a lot older than I am. I think you're a couple months older than I am.
Yeah, a couple months.
So we're, and Chuck has served over 20 years. He has 20 years service with the U.S. Army. And we thought that it would be a delight to hear Chuck's story on what Veterans Day means to him today in 2025. But you were born in North Adams, Chuck?
Yes, I was. Born right here, 100 yards away probably.
Yeah.
I was born North Adams, and then my parents moved to Williamstown when I was 4. Went to Mount Greylock, and at the end of high school, I would have liked to have gone to college, but didn't have the money. So I knew the military was important. I had my uncles were in the service, saw the pictures, and growing up, it was like, I just knew in my heart it would either be like law enforcement, state police, or the military, and talked to my best friend and said, come on, let's go talk to the recruiter, and he signed up before I did, and that started both of our 20-year careers.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Holly, you said your father was in the service?
Yes. Well, my father was in the U.S. Navy, and also I have a cousin who is, he is stationed in Germany right now. He was down south for a long time, but he was born and raised in Pittsfield. His name is Daniel Hermansky Jr., and he is a lieutenant in the Air Force. So him and his family just got stationed to Germany. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your service. And we're so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah. So I notice you have not a Berkshire accent. So where were you stationed to get such a nice Southern drawl?
Back 27 years now, and you still here. So I was stationed. I went to basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then I had my communications training in Georgia, at Fort Gordon. So I had 2 tours at West Berlin. And then I spent 7 years at Fort Hood, Texas, a couple years out in California, and then I had another tour out to in Texas in El Paso, and then I retired out of Panama. So I've been away for 27 years, and I cannot believe you still hear some sort of a Southern accent.
It's a nice Southern accent, so it's not a bad thing. Now, where was your favorite place to be stationed?
Berlin.
Berlin.
Berlin has affected me tremendously from the standpoint, as I was telling Dick, I landed in West Berlin on my 19th birthday. I got off the plane, and it was culture shock from Williamstown, North Adams, seeing all of these armed guards wearing their submachine guns, and I thought, what have I got myself into?
I bet.
Now, it's only 30 years past the end of World War II. So being stationed in West Berlin, we had the opportunity to go into East Berlin. We just had to apply for flag orders. You had to go in and be out by midnight. God help you if you weren't out by midnight. But that allowed me to see the difference between democracy and fascism from the standpoint of so many people lined up to going to stores to buy food, to buy clothes.
Yes.
They're lined up outside, and the shelves were not completely bare, but you didn't have what we had in West Berlin or in West Germany or here in the States. You didn't have the choices. You didn't have the colors. People had to wait for 10 plus years to get the same automobile as others would have. The technology wasn't there. There was this thick air of coal floating through the air all the time because that's how they heated their houses. So being in Berlin at that point in time and seeing that as a 19, 20, 20-year-old kid opened my eyes. I went back a second time. My daughter was born in Berlin. And then the issues that we went through in the military when we had different spies that were being caught and how they affected us in the city, in my job, in communications, and dealing with the Joint Refugee Operation Centers and the people that were still trying to escape from East Berlin. I lived close enough from my quarters where I could see the Berlin Wall, you could see the guard towers, you could hear the rifle shots, you could hear the dog, you'd see the searchlights. That had a profound effect on me, and it still does to this day. That's why I'm so passionate about our government treating people right, taking care of our citizens, because I've seen the ramifications of what happens when the government doesn't do that.
And it definitely gives you that perspective. So now, here we are in 2025. Do you see a similarity? Do you sort of see a mirroring effect of what's happening that sort of is similar to what you saw? Do you have any fears or apprehensions about what is going on right now?
I see a lot of similarities. I see a lot of parallels. And it's troubling to me from the standpoint not only learning through history classes, college classes, seeing it in person, reading about World War II, what led up to it, and seeing what our government is doing now to our people, to our citizens.
Yeah.
We have basically decapitated the military structure right now from the standpoint of when our government eliminates all of the inspector generals in the Army, Air Force, the Navy, the inspector generals for the different cabinet positions, and then the leadership within the joint chairman of the chief of staff, and then other senior generals, and now they're moving cabinet officials into military housing. That's wrong, in my opinion, and I'm only one person. But I know there's a lot of veterans out there that are worried. I'm worried about our soldiers because Veterans Day, I know there's different rallies and protests going on in the country on Veterans Day. And I have been really struggling with that because I do not want to do anything that takes away from the supporting the veterans because they're out there, they're doing their best they can. What makes me worried is the information that they're getting now. And I don't know what that is. I've been out 30 years. You know, so I don't know.
Right.
But I fear for the young soldiers who don't have life's experiences as we do. You know, they're 22 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old.
Right.
I don't know.
One thing that, you know, when you talk about demonstrations or celebrations, I always think of one person growing up in North Adams, Mike Ketcherbone.
My ski instructor.
Yeah, you know Mike that.
Yes.
But he was he'd go to every veteran's funeral. He would sing, he would sing taps at the funerals. But it was very important to him, the celebration of Veterans Day, and he taught us, you know, it's the 11th month, and it's the 11th day, and at the 11th hour. And it should, you know, it was a time when I think it was the First World War. That was when the armistice was signed, and that's what they chose for Veterans Day. I had my great uncle who lived in Holyoke, and he was a World War I vet. He lost his only son, his only child in World War II, but he talked about, you know, what it was like during World War II, and when after they signed the armistice, he knew of a set of twins that was killed after the armistice was signed because they didn't want to carry all the munitions back, so they were just shooting it off just to do that. You know, there's some very serious things happen, even when it's a time of peace, where the peace has been had occurred. So it's a time of reverence. I don't think it's a time for demonstrations on November 11th. We all have family members that, you know, that bring up memories. I know, I think of my dad. He had birthright citizenship. You know, he was born to two immigrants in Breesboro, Vermont in 1913, but then he was drafted after Pearl Harbor, and he served in the United States Army, and he served in North Africa, in the invasion of North Africa, and then he fought in Sicily and Sardinia and Italy, France, and Germany. And I think of my wife's father, who had a career in the Army. He was just 17, 18 years old at the end of World War II, and he went into the Army, and he served in World War II, then in Korea, and 2 tours in Vietnam. And I was amazed because I was sort of a conscientious objector. I thought about joining the service a couple times. I came very close, but then it just something that wasn't within me that I could do. I felt bad, but I couldn't. But when I met him, it was interesting because I had never met someone that's all they wanted to do, is they wanted to be a soldier. And he saw it as something that was very honorable and something that he wanted to pursue his career. And it was his life. And it was a learning experience for me. But he also had to confront people who were ruthless and had to stand up to them, you know, and especially in Vietnam when he was there in Saigon, you know, there were, you know, so it's a very difficult job. It's difficult, but what the military brings is it brings people together from all walks of life. When you go into basic training, doesn't matter if it's Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, it doesn't matter what your race is, what your religion is, none of that matters because you're all thrown together and you have to learn to work together. And then you learn so much listening to each other's story. And then as the farther you progress, you realize that you have so much more in common than you do differences. And then when you have to go into those difficult situations, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're doing your job for the person to your left and to your right. Now, I didn't go to combat, thankfully, but during Desert Storm, I changed jobs on a Friday. The company was alerted on a Monday. The new guy was in my seat. That unit I was in for 5 years, they all deployed over. I had to stay back and deal with the family support, which started from ground up, which was an eye-opener because all soldiers, when you deploy, you have to have family care plans in place, your wills, everything documented.
There's a lot that goes into that.
But there's a lot that falls through the cracks. So when the soldiers deploy, oh, I forgot to leave my wife the checking account number or blank checks or a power of attorney or whatever. So I got to see a side of the military dealing with the dependents that most never get to see. And that gave me more than appreciation. But you talked about your family's experiences. My uncle was in World War II, and I have a picture of him sitting there on a rock with a big Nazi sign. And I tried to talk to him before he passed away, and he would talk a little bit, but he went into one of the concentration camps on day 2. And when I was in Germany, I visited Dachau concentration camp. The aura that still permeates those locations, along with the exhibits and seeing what was left of the old buildings, and how people can do that to each other. So when I see things that parallels what's going on today, that parallels what we went through or what Germany went through and did to people,
There are many
It's-
parallels.
It's
Yes.
hard for me to deal with that.
I try to bring it up when I talk to a politician or whatever, through my life. Like in my neighborhood, there was this man, Steve Matranga. He never married, but, getting to know him, he was, a pretty smart man. And he said how he had helped liberate a concentration camp. And then there was a man, Eugene Lebeau, he lived on Church Street, and he grew up in Adams, and he was French, but his neighbors were German, so as a kid, he learned to speak German, and he spoke French, so as soon as he got in the Army, they wanted him because he could speak all those languages, and he also helped liberate a concentration camp. And it really makes me very sad to know, instead of liberating concentration camps right now, we're funding them. We're talking about building them in our own country. We could call them detention centers, whatever, but it's the same thing. They're concentration camps.
And that's why I feel like Veterans Day is so important for us to have those celebrations and not these rallies, because there are so many veterans among us, and it needs to be celebrated so that when the veterans are walking down in these parades, it's almost carrying a legacy. And it is, children asking and us carrying down history to one another. And we are in a really, really critical time in our nation. I feel like our service members are so important and should be really, appreciated and recognized always. And, like I said earlier, there was a service member at my daughter's school, and I wasn't sure if he was in a costume or if he was really a member of the service. And I always try, and sometimes it's you're nervous to stick your neck out, but I always try to come out of my comfort zone, stick my neck out and say, hey, are you in the service? Well, then thank you for your service, because these kids go, and yeah, you're thrown into this situation, and they're literally risking their lives, their comfort, their everything. Just maybe you will serve, maybe you won't, but it's a sacrifice that they're doing for each and every one of us. And I feel like as a nation, we don't really realize that, our youth doesn't realize the sacrifice and that we did in an earlier time when I grew up, and maybe even when I wasn't even born yet. I was born in the 80s, but I feel like the respect for our service members is kind of lost sometimes. So that's why it's so important. Veterans Day is so important.
Right, and because Veterans Day is coming up, I just wanted to do a shout out. In North Adams, we have a veteran service director. His name is Curtis DeRocher, and he serves the Northern Berkshire veterans. And they even have a Facebook page. You can go to that Northern Berkshire Veteran Service District Facebook page. And they have a lot of events. And I went down there today, talked to Curtis, and picked up some of the flyers there. And they're asking people, like, if you were a veteran and when you enlisted or were drafted and you lived in Massachusetts, there's bonuses available to you. So if you just call our office today at 662-3040 or go to their Facebook page, you can see if you're eligible for those. And they have some upcoming events that are taking place. And the deadline, I guess, is today, the 3rd, to sign up for it. But I'm sure if you try to get a hold of them, there's going to be a Robert F. Davis Memorial 9th Annual Veterans Dinner. It's free for all veterans and the guests. It's Friday, November 7th, this coming Friday, at All Saints Episcopal Church. And there'll be a service of appreciation and remembrance at 5 p.m. And there'll be dining at the church from 4 to 6 p.m. It's a good meal. And then there's also, if you wanted takeout, if you wanted someone to deliver, or if you could go and pick up at 5:45. So you can call the All Saints Parish Hall at 664-9656 if you want to participate in that. And then also, they're having a Northern Berkshire Christmas breakfast on December 13th at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the American Legion. The breakfast is free for veterans and one guest, and we'll have a free Chinese auction. and giveaways and new clothing, and there's a raffle. And at City Hall too, for veterans, there's also they have a food pantry in City Hall for veterans if necessary. And that's open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You just go to the Veterans Affairs office. Like we have a friend that was to the show, Michael Wilbur, who is a veteran, and they've been very helpful in that office to help him because sometimes, veterans, they served younger in their lives and then life has its ups and downs and sometimes you need aid, but Curtis and Tina are there to help you. So I encourage you to contact them and they see what they can do for you. I don't know what's been your experience. Do you go to the VA hospitals?
I do utilize the VA. In fact, I am so thankful for the Veteran Affairs. I go to VA in Bennington right now, but I've gone to Albany. I'm affiliated with White River Junction at this point. But it hurts to go into there, and see the providers and see the receptionists and the lab techs. They're doing their best and they've got the smile on their face and they're trying to present like nothing's changed for them, but they're not getting paid. And that hurts.
Because they're government work.
Because they're there trying to help us. And what can we do for them? I bring a dozen donuts, once or twice a week and drop it off each week and say thank you. But that gratitude doesn't seem to go very far. I don't know what else to do. There's a lot of things to do. I have friends that work for the VA out in Seattle, and they're struggling. Their workload has skyrocketed, but they're not getting the support from the top down. But they're doing the best for the veterans coming in, and it's those veterans are the ones that are continuing to thank them, which makes them feel good, and they say it's the only thing that's carrying us through right now. And it's hard for a veteran to reach out and say, I need help, because you are mission focused for however long your tour is, 1 tour or 20 or 30 years, you're mission focused. And to ask for help is hard for a lot of people to do. And it's hard to hear when our active duty soldiers, sailors, airmen, roughly 30% are on food stamps. That's not right, because the military forces are the last leg of the political will. So if all else fails in democracy, then they call the military. And that gives the soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines a sense of purpose and pride when it's done correctly, and you know why you're being called upon. But what I'm seeing in the news and what I've been reading and what I'm hearing from my fellow vets, what's going on, it's not right.
No.
It's not right.
And, that's why it's so important. Behind us it says poverty is the enemy. And it can always sometimes be seen as the enemy. And I can imagine that it's kind of a desperate feeling. You are decorated as a military person for however many years that you serve. And as you come out, it probably, there's some embarrassment, or if you have to be in a food bank line or have food stamps. But I just want to remind any veterans watching to never be embarrassed to ask for help, because it takes a village, especially in these desperate times right now. Our neighbors, our friends, check on your neighbors and always think a veteran. And even if you're not a veteran, we all need to help each other and be there for one another. And it is so important just to know that, we're all human and we're all going through a tough time right now. And we're all here for each other.
Now, I just have a question. When you were in the service, were there a lot of Hispanic members
Yes.
in the service? Because I see that right now, people of brown skin are being targeted.
Right.
And, there was a case in California where a father who, I don't know if he was documented or not, but he had 3 sons that were Marines.
I saw that.
And it's just unfortunate, if people are serving their country, you don't want to see their fathers treated that way. Any human being, that is. But it's just very unfortunate that that situation
Yeah.
would come about. And we have, we have to thank the veterans too for a lot of what we have, like the GI Bill of Rights that was passed for the World War II veterans. When we're saying November 11th, as the armistice was signed for World War I, there was a bonus that was given to those soldiers. And during the Depression in the 1930s, when President Hoover was president, things were very bad. And it was so bad that these soldiers marched on Washington and set up what they called Hoovervilles. They were called the Bonus Army. They went there because they were struggling so hard. They wanted their bonus. They didn't want to wait till they died. They wanted the bonus now. And it was very unfortunate because they ended up, Hoover had ordered the Army to disperse them. And in like we're seeing now in our own cities, troops were deployed on veterans.
Yeah,
But it was such a terrible situation that when World War II started, they made sure that they passed in Congress the GI Bill of Rights, which guaranteed, certain veterans' benefits like education, housing, those
The medical care.
yeah.
I feel like our administration is sort of disabling, our veterans, and you had mentioned in California, but it's also in our inner cities in Chicago, all these, and it's not just as you say, brown. It's our black families. It's our brown families. It has no face, and the unfortunate thing is, as these people, like you've seen in the past, these men are not even dressed in military uniform. They are wearing black civilian clothes, and they're knocking on doors in the middle of the night. And these people are being called aliens. And they're not aliens, they're human beings. And they don't even have enough time to say, are you a government worker? What is going on? And they're being shuttled into U-Haul vehicles or police cars, or not even police cars. It is a very scary time for our nation. Yeah.
That's why it is extremely important, because I know that what kids learn in school now is different from what I learned and we learned growing up. But it is important to understand your history. Mm-hmm. It's important to understand where to look for facts, and don't just look at one source of input, whether it's media or it's print media or it's a television news source. You need to be able to critically think across the spectrum and realize, am I being lied to, or am I receiving factual information? And know how to get there. But it's also hard for many of us when we have a disconnect with family members or our friends because they're supporting what we're seeing across the United States. Mm. And I can't wrap my head around, especially because of my time in Berlin and seeing what the German government over 80 years have done to recognize through memorials, to never forget what Germany did to the world, to Jews, to gypsies, to homosexuals, to, pick a class they didn't like. Mm-hmm. And Henry Winkler, the Fonz, his uncle was one that was, he was supposed to leave Berlin with his brother. And he told his brother, I'm going to wait one more day, I'll meet up with you. And that night they came and they took him. And Germany has these little browns, they call them stepping stones, outside apartment buildings that list the people's names, the dates, when they were taken, where they were transported to, and when they were brought to the concentration camps. Or they have railroad tracks, which identifies, for instance, 1,035 Jews from Berlin to Riga concentration camp. 187 railroad ties with all of these inscriptions. Those are just two examples. There's hundreds of them. And so we cannot forget, we cannot ignore history, And the veterans stand up, whether they know going in at 18 or 19, and most don't. They go in for their own reasons, which is great. And then they start to learn. And they're, at least they used to be, you were trained in not only your job, but about the history of the military, history of the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, whatever. And they continue to build on that for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's always a building process for education.
And for any young people watching, it isn't so important. Tomorrow we'll be voting.
Yes.
Go to your ballot box, vote, educate yourself, go to the library, get a book on Russia, get a book on Germany, educate yourself, because we have these sources of education. It just takes a little bit of wanting to learn. But it is history repeating itself if you actually do, but that takes right, like I said, a sort of wanting to learn, but it's right at our fingertips. And it is so important that we know so that we can carry the history on.
What you were saying about the lessons of World War II, I just want to hold up this book. It's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights right here. And the reason why the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was written was because of what happened during World War II. It was an answer to that every human being has the right, certain inalienable rights, just like in our Declaration of Independence. We're going to be celebrating 250 years next year of our independence and our revolution. But in that Declaration of Independence, it said all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So then what the United Nations did is they listed the other rights there. And one of those rights is the right to seek and enjoy asylum. And it's really important, if you're going to try to learn what's going on, try to read these and figure out what rights you have and what rights all your other human beings on this planet have. And know that, and from my understanding, the United States Army has always stood for those human rights. They have a military code of conduct. Is that correct? And I think it explains how people are supposed to act and interact with others, and that defends human rights all over the world.
I think also you were saying, that you can't wrap your head around why certain people voted for the administration that we have right now. I think a lot of people were duped. I think they're continually being duped. If you have a chance to look up the administration's social medias, there's a lot of, I don't think it's funny, but some would think comedy or funny, backhanded, funny videos with, and so we are a really quick generation. We want everything instantly, and we're sort of this flippant sort of, I hate to say it, but this flippant sort of generation where you just shrug your shoulders, some of us, and the shock value is sometimes funny. And then there's, folks like us that, it's very shocking, it is scary, and I don't think we're really thinking about what's going to happen in the long run.
Everybody should exercise their right to vote, but also everybody should recognize that vote has consequences. When I was in the service, when you walked into any unit, you would have on the wall your chain of command from the president down to the company commander. And back then, we didn't have social media. The only thing about politics that came up was elections coming up. That's your right to vote, exercise your right. Do not partake in anything, political activities in uniform. If you want to go off, on your own time, just be in civilian clothes.
Yep.
But at that time, nobody ever worried about the sitting president wanting to destroy us from within. And I will tell you, on January 6th, I sat on my couch. I was almost to the point of vomiting. I was literally shaking to see our democracy being attacked, and I was yelling to the TV, where is the National Guard? Why aren't they out there? Because I know how things work, or how it should be working. That was the icing on the cake for me, and there's no turning back.
I find myself yelling, not at the TV, but I have social media, and I know I'm not allowed to say it, but it has 2 T's in it. And I like that platform because I can see everything live. And I was watching our administration, Donald Trump, talk to Marines. And he, during that speech, was disclosing a lot of internal information, speaking very flippantly, and I also was yelling at the phone. And I was like, oh my God, this is having so many repercussions. Oh my God. Yeah. So it is, it's a shock value, but it's also, as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh dear. It's a scary time, and I don't really know if I have words other than that, because we don't have any control, but
I know.
It's.
I had the opportunity in Berlin when President Carter came over to see that. When Vice President Rockefeller came to Berlin, I was able to see that. And I know when you have a sitting president come to your location, you're young, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're excited about it. You may not, most probably do not understand the entirety of what we are dealing with.
There's a bigger picture, and I
there's a
try
lot
to
going
watch.
on behind the scenes
Yes.
that we don't see.
2
that
months
worries me.
ago, Donald Trump was, when he made all of the Associated Press either sign
Loyalty statement.
or get out. And in that conference, he mentioned Venezuela, and I was like, why? That's so weird. And then 3 months later, we'll see this is what's going on. Or 2 months ago, we were talking about the SNAP benefits. Well, the time it got to the news, it's now, it's November, and everyone's freaking out. So it is so important that we're civically engaged and we watch, because the wheels are turning slowly, but like way ahead, like if you listen and educate yourself, you can kind of know what's going to happen. And I'm not really excited about the steps that I'm seeing that are happening even now, projecting for our election coming up. So, it's just so important. Again, Veterans Day, so that our young people do join the military, because it does take all of us to make this change.
What you're saying is knowledge is very important. And there's a saying that I've heard that there's virtue in knowledge, there's goodness in knowledge, there's strength in knowledge, and there's freedom in knowledge. And that's, I think that's what Veterans Day should be about. And I'm thinking maybe we can bring this to a conclusion.
Wonderful.
I think I thank you so much for both participating in this, and I hope we can carry this discussion forward.
I'd like that.
Thank everybody here at Northern Berkshire Community Television for putting this show on. As we always close the show, we always say, power to the people.
Power to the people,
Power to
yes,
the people.
very much so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud. War's always been the bosses' way, sir. The Union forever defending our rights. Down with the black leather workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters in many far